All right. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Freddy Fazbear Fast Friday reaction stream. And on tap for today, as you can see by the screen, as you can see by the title and thumbnail, we got some more Secret of the Mimic stuff to talk about. Because apparently, hold on, let me move my camera for a second. As you can see by the title, it says everything you know about FNAF is a lie. Now, bring up that in the very beginning as the introduction because this may get heated. My reaction may get heated. This may get controversial. I don't know if this will get very, very controversial. I don't know if this will be, FNAF security breach Gregory being a robot or FNAF 1, 2, 3, 4 being Dream Theory or a Help Wanted theory that Golden Freddy never existed. I don't know if it'll be like that controversial and that hated, but everything is a lie apparently. Now, that's also interesting because if you remember in my review to See the Mimic, when I was giving my huge long analysis, I talked for like 30, 40, 50 minutes, just getting as many thoughts on the game as I could. And I feel like even in that 30, 40, 50 minute spiel at the end of my playthrough, I feel like I glossed over some things. I didn't really go in depth, which is ironic because I literally talked for 30, 40 minutes. But something I did talk about is the weird direction reboot that this series went with this game and everything, of how pretty much everything that we've been told throughout the series has indeed been a lie. Of how, you thought these animatronic or this series of animatronics was made by William Afton or made by Henry. Well, this game seems to imply that previous creations that we always assumed, timeline perspective, assumed had been made by William Afton and Henry, were made by Edwin originally, and then was stolen by William Afton and Henry, and then repurposed to be the, Freddy creations that we would see in later installments that we would have assumed from the very beginning were the original creators. Like, for instance, in the secret ending of this game and everything, you see a Springlock Gator animatronic, which people have interpreted that is the first incarnation of what would be Monty in Security Breach. And we know this game takes place in the 70s, and Security Breach, I've said this numerous times before, takes place in the 2020, 2030s. So Edwin created a Gator animatronic Springlock suit that would later, 50, 60 years later, in the Pizza Putz era in the 2020s, would later be Monty, that would be made by William Afton, Henry, the new CEO of Fazbear Entertainment. It's still hard to say who's the new CEO following the FNAF Sits fire, where everything is burned down and Fazbear Entertainment was no longer a corporate entity. It's still unclear of who the new CEO was. Whoever it is, whether it's Mrs. Afton or somebody else, made the Monty animatronic that you see in the Pizza Putz. They were inspired by the Springlock suit in the 70s. Same thing goes for, I want to say it's a Spring Bonnie animatronic and a Fredbear animatronic in that room as well, which we know Fredbear originated, or at least the first appearance of Fredbear, was in FNAF 4. The golden bear with the purple hat and bow tie that gets shoved in the mouth of the FNAF 4 crying child by Michael Afton and his bully friends, and then he gets chomped, he gets bitten and dead because him crying, his tears moisten the spring locks. And just as a brief recap, like I mentioned numerous times before, the spring lock suits worked when humans were able to crawl inside them, be worn as like a costume. But if any rain, tears, moisture, breaths, anything would cause the spring lock mechanisms to snap shut and basically skewer the human body from the inside out, which is very gory and graphic and everything. But that's a brief history lesson. So seeing Fredbear in a room made by Edwin, when we know Fredbear also came in to play in FNAF 4 and Fredbear's Family Diner, is very, very bizarre. And it's very bizarre that these animatronics that we've talked about and have seen for over a decade at this point, because I want to say FNAF came out, what, 2013, 2014? It's been over a decade at this point. And I've been here since the very beginning, which is insane. But I just remember these animatronics, these creations that we spent so much time in talking about and theorizing, just seeing this complete, I don't want to say gaslight, but this complete 180 where, oh, you thought these were made by William Afton the whole time? Well, turns out it was made by Edwin and it was stolen by William Afton, so it takes a lot of punch out of it. Because very similarly, since I talked about Fredbear, I bring up as well that, we always questioned why William Afton would make, Golden Freddy, the Fredbear, and Golden Bonnie Springlock suits. Why make these Springlock suits so deadly where you can shove a child into the mouth and they get bit, right, and die, right? Why make these suits so deadly? Well, turns out he did not make those suits and everything, so that takes a lot of punch and everything, and also takes a lot of punch of William Afton's goal following FNAF 4 with the FNAF 4 Crying Child got bit and everything, where we always assumed following the bite and following the FNAF 4 Crying Child die and everything, that's when William Afton went on this mission to revive his child in robot form, coming back to the line of I will put you back together in robot form, and that's how we get to stuff like Sister Location, where the Funtime animatronics were made with the goal of luring and encapsulating kids to build up enough remnant to make robot kids and also get one step closer to William Afton's immortality. So, that all being said, throwing a wrench in the equation of Edwin making the Fredbear animatronic everything, it kind of takes the punch out of William Afton's goal of trying to put his son back together over his creation. Kind of takes a lot of punch out of it. So, I'm very curious what this theory video is going to be all about and everything. And before we get started, one non-FNAF note I want to touch on everything. 2K just announced for their cover and everything for 2K26. They just announced their covers is going to be Shay, Gildas Alexander, which, shocker, Angel Reese, and Carmelo Anthony. And I will do a way more deep dive of 2K and everything. Now that we know 2K will be coming out on August 28th and everything, I will be playing the game on release and everything. Not sure if we'll be doing a 13, 14, 15, 16 hour stream like we did for 2K25, but hey, if it happens, it happens, but we'll be there streaming on launch and everything, so be there for it and everything. And the reason why I bring up 2K and everything is because now that we have a release date, now that covers have been announced, we will soon be getting news and courtside reports and news for 2K26. So be prepared for those streams, for me talking about the news and everything, but also be on the lookout for my deep dive wish list that I've been teasing for a while, where I've said in past streams that I have a wish list in mind. I've thought about this wish list. I've gone back and forth on it. I've researched on it for a long time and everything. And it's ready to go and everything. Right? The stream's ready to go and everything. I have my notes and everything. I'm ready to go, ready to start streaming. But I have a dedicated stream that I want to do for the wish list and everything. And I also want to release and do that stream when we start to get news for 2K26 because I feel like that's the most relevant. Right? Because to me, I never thought it was relevant to do the wish list in like April, for instance, when 2K25 is dead, but there's no 2K26 news out or anything, so what's the wish list going to do with anything? Right? But now that 2K26 is coming out or anything and there's going to be news, the wishlist stream will be coming out very soon. But anyway, remove 2K. That's not the game we're talking about. Let's talk about the game that we're actually came here to talk about. 2K, you'll get your time and shine very, very soon. And I'm sure I'll be reacting to a lot of trailers when 2K comes out.
Secret of the Mimic is finally here, and it changes everything. Our understanding of the books, our understanding of the timeline, and our understanding of the characters we've come to know over the last 11 years. But as always, I'm here to pull an Afton, or an Edwin, as it turns out, and put it all back together.
But back together, like I just said, the implications of Fredbear being made by Edwin ruins the I'll put you back together line in FNAF 4, ruins William Afton's goal following the FNAF 4 crying child dying, where his goal is to rebuild his dead son following his murderous creation, killing him and everything, trying to gain immortality, trying to gain enough remnant, leading to creating the Funtime animatronics. That throws a huge wrench to the equation now that Edwin created everything.
Hello Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's jaw has been hanging open like a badly made Chica costume ever since the release of FNAF's Secret of the Mimic. And I'm not alone in that feeling. Every single YouTuber has been completely sideswiped by this game.
Chica! I can't believe we got Chica! Hey! Oh! Oh my god, there she is! That's insane!
Why has it
Unfortunately, my reactions didn't make the cut for the Game Theory video, unfortunately, but I guess shameless plug out the way. If you want to see my full playthrough of me playing Secret of the Mimic on release, we have the full playlist on the channel right now. You can go watch after this video.
taken us all by surprise? Well, besides the fact the game actually works, mostly, it also did something that is completely unheard of in a FNAF.
Works. Yeah. I guess talking about that, because I did talk about it in my playthrough of Secret of the Mimic and everything. But overall, I would say the game played pretty well. It was pretty responsive. It was no, security breach where, we had a bunch of game-breaking glitches, issues, it being notoriously famous for said issues. Because as a recap, Secret of the Mimic is the Nets incarnation of a game made by Steel Wool that they made from scratch, right? Because brief timeline, Steel Wool got their start with the FNAF VR Help Wanted games, but obviously those are rebirth remasters of games that already pre-exist. And then Security Breach came out, the first game that Steel Wool made from scratch, and we know that was a very, very glitchy mess. And then Ruin came out, which is a DLC, so that doesn't count. Help Wanted 2 came out, which, as I said before, VR game, which is already pre-existing. And then you have Secret of the Mimic. So this is the next game that Steel Wool made from scratch. And I'm happy to report, yeah, we did not have a Security Breach level game-breaking, glitching mess of an experience. It was way more polished. There was way more game testing, which is great. I would say the one bug I ran into is in the Music Man section, when you're running away from Big Top and everything, when he collapses to the roof and everything. There's a section where you have to go underground and everything, and either one of his arms or one of his legs trapped me underneath it, so I could not move. I literally was stuck, so I had to reload a previous checkpoint and then redo the section over and again. But other than that, I feel like the game was pretty responsive, other than that one bug. So great.
FNAF game. They actually gave us a story. And I don't mean the super cryptic kind that we have to spend years and years figuring out.
I would say the game is very cryptic, right? I said in my playthrough that I'm very curious of how people piece together the lore for this game and everything, because it's very confusing, because there's a lot to talk about in this game, and it's very complicated, it's very confusing. There's multiple endings, which in a FNAF game, that's a given. of like what ending's canon. What do the endings mean? What does M1, M2 mean? What does the Mitzvahs machine origin from Fiona mean? How does that connect to Mitzvahs from Ruin? So there's a ton of stuff out there.
I mean the kind that actually helps us move forward in this franchise. For a long time, the community has been frustrated with the lack of clarification out there for this series. It's been years of theory upon theory upon theory, and while we have come to certain agreements for parts of it, there are still massive sections of the lore that we haven't been able to agree on simply because there's never really been a solid foundation to jump off of. But now, after 11 years of this franchise, Secret of the Mimic came as the earliest entry in the FNAF timeline and said, guys, I got you, giving us relatively clear breakdowns of how the early years of Fazbear came to be, as well as throwing a bunch of hand cranks into the works that make us question everything we knew about this franchise. There's timelines that have been displaced, character personas completely shattered, and understandings of where the future of this franchise is going totally flipped on its head.
Yeah. I've talked about this in a previous FNAF Theory video. It's the one where it said... It's something about like the FNAF timeline being ruined. Oh, let me see if I can pull it up. Sorry, awkward cut, but this is a stream after all. Unfortunately, it's not a VOD where there's a ton of edits and everything. It's a live stream. So what happens in the moment is what you get. But yeah. This video, if I can pull it up. Okay, there we go. I brought it up in I brought it up in this theory video. Why FNAF is impossibly broken. Basically going down the FNAF timeline, and it's a good video. Once again, just like the shameless plug of watching my FNAF Secret of the Mimic playthrough after watching this, you should also go watch this theory video if you haven't already. Because my main point of the video was why I believe FNAF is broken and impossible to solve is because, you know, gone are the days where we're in like the early stages of FNAF, like the 2014, 2015 era of FNAF, where FNAF 1 comes out and it's a huge hit. It's a big hit on YouTube and social media, right? Big hit on the internet. And then a month later, you get an Easter egg trailer, teaser for a sequel game, FNAF 2. And then as soon as you see the teaser trailer, a week later, the game comes out, right? FNAF 2 comes out. It's also a big hit on the internet. And then within a week, oh, here's FNAF 3. That game comes out. And you pretty much have a new FNAF game like a month, right? Like gone are those days, right? Where we have a FNAF game like every week or every month, right? Now it's like you get one, maybe if you're lucky, two FNAF games a year. Like you have, you know, the Ruin DLC and then also FNAF VR Help 1 and 2. You have Into the Pit last year. Then you have Secret of the Mimic this year, right? And then I guess if you want to consider the Dead by Daylight FNAF DLC, if that counts. But you get my point. Like, there's no longer a time where you have a FNAF game constantly in the forefront, constantly in headlines every month. Like, gone are those days. But in the meantime, FNAF is popular because of its mystery, because of its lore, because of its timeline, because of its constant solving of Easter eggs, lore, and story, right? And to keep the popularity of the series up and everything, because it's not a game coming out every month that's keeping people talking about the series year round, myself included, we need something else to talk about. And in that case, it's theories, it's answers, it's trying to come to terms of mysteries from old games from FNAF 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, we're still trying to figure out what the heck FNAF 4 means, what that game is all about, and that game came out in 2015. Right? To me, the reason why FNAF is popular to this day is not because the games, it's because the lore and the questions that we are still trying to answer. FNAF thrives on the mystery. FNAF thrives on the very subjective storytelling ambiguity of it all. Right? That's what makes it popular. If the story was just outright given to us, FNAF would not be popular. And it keeps it popular year round to talk about. And to me, that's why the FNAF timeline is broken. And that's why I said in the video, is because FNAF needs to be popular and convoluted and confusing nonstop year round to stay popular and stay relevant. Because the games are just solved, then there's nothing to talk about.
And I intend to theorize about all of it in a 3-part series across the next month or so, focusing on the 3 main characters from this new game. The newcomer Edwin Murray and his family, the big bad Mimic, and, of course, Fazbear Entertainment, William Afton, and Henry. All of that will then be followed up with a live talkback with a bunch of other FNAF theorists to discuss the game, our differing theories, and generally just talking about the franchise that we've all enjoyed for so long. Dates for that are TBD right now, so make sure you're subscribed so that when I do announce it, you'll be the first to know. And to make sure you don't miss all of the crazy theories leading up to it, because believe me, you don't want to miss them. There are some real bombshells in this game that I want to explore. But for now, let's start from the beginning. We jump into the game as a lowly mechanic working for the wonderful as always Fazbear Entertainment. Our name is Arnold, and we've just gotten off of a 36-hour shift, only to be called in for one last job to help recover some Fazbear assets from one of their contractors, Edwin Murray. Begrudgingly, we head to Murray's costume manor, only to discover the asset is a set of blueprints for a killer animatronic endoskeleton that can fit into any costume and learn the role of any character or person, the Mimic. We gain access to different areas of the facility by upgrading our data diver with different permissions, from basic to security, repair, all the way up to executive privileges, all while trying to outrun or outweight the Mimic.
He's going for it.
Eventually, we get our hands on the blueprints, only to discover that it wasn't Fazbear talking to us through dispatch. It was the Mimic pretending to be them to get their hands on the data diver. This leads to one of 3 endings where we either escape and get killed by the Mimic, we escape and get killed by the Mimic, or we fix the Mimic and then just stand there watching it sleep. Now, these guys deserve an episode of their own, because whichever one is canon could have massive implications that I just don't have time to get into right now. Instead, let's turn our attention to the stuff we can discover during the game, and the first of our big 3 characters, Edwin Murray. If you're a longtime viewer of this channel, or you're one of the people who understands my pain and has actually read the books, then that name isn't anything new. Edwin Murray is a character that we were introduced to in both the Storyteller and the Mimic.
And I have been the dead horse on the Tiger Rock story nonstop, sharing the backstory of Edwin. And I feel like I shouldn't have the need to talk about the backstory again of Edwin Murray, genius inventor, has a son, David, gets a ball, gets killed, dead son is built in robot form, reminds Edwin of his dead son, beats it, and then becomes homicidal. That's a very, very, very brief Cliff Notes summary of what happened. Because I feel like every single stream, the last 20 of these streams, I feel like we've talked about the Edwin story. If you don't know about it now, then I don't know what to tell you.
from the Tales from the Peterplex series. His company was bought out by Fazbear. He created the Mimic to babysit his son David, but his son tragically died. And because the Mimic kept mimicking his dead son, he beat the thing up, teaching it violence, and then showed up 40 years later trying to stop it. However, when The Secret of the Mimic's creative director Evan Lampe said to Dorco,
"If you've read the books, you don't know the full story."
he wasn't kidding. The story of Edwin goes so much deeper and is so much more tragic than we could have ever realized. As Arnold explores Murray's costume manor, we can find audio recordings and mailboxes containing digital text logs that give us the real story of what happened to this place. It was originally owned by Edwin's father, who we'll call Murray Sr. Edwin Murray works for him.
Edwin Murray. This is my dad's place.
You know, because nepotism. But Edwin is the quirky inventor type, and to test out his new voice recorder creation, he seeks out one of the new employees and former puppeteers.
Excuse me, can I borrow your voice for a project?
What for? I don't even know you. I'm brand new here. Let's start again. I'm Fiona.
Murray Sr. then passes away and leaves the whole thing to Edwin, who rebrands everything to bring his wacky inventions to life.
Maybe rebrand? We could start making some of my inventions for real.
Together with Fiona, they invent a bunch of wild tech, like a coffee machine that can learn your coffee preferences to make the perfect cup, a coat hanger that can adjust to any size you need, and an adorable vacuum cleaner. Oh, just look at him with his tiny little brooms and his little dumpy. Anyway, alongside this, he is also making a bunch of costumes, which I suppose makes sense given that's the name of the business. But the characters we see are interesting if you're a FNAF fan. We see a handful of characters that you might recognize, like Pirate and Cowgirl Roxy, Hillbilly Monty, a puppet pirate Foxy, and the big one, a rollerblading costume of
Yep, Chica. Which is very, very bizarre, because ever since FNAF 6, we as a community theorized Chica was a Mirka melody from a previous book iteration. Talked about the Mirka melodies were made to avoid copyright by an off-brand company, and one of the characters they mentioned in Mirka melodies was a Weird Bird Girl, Weird Bird Girl being Chica. And we related that to what happened in real life with Chuck E. Cheese, of how Chuck E. Cheese was technically two corporations, two companies, that one went under, one went bankrupt, and they merged together, got bought out by Chuck E. Cheese. And some of the characters from the bankrupt company were popular enough to join the Chuck E. Cheese gang and then be part of their band crew for the next 40, 50 century, right? Pretty much. And we relate FNAF to Chuck E. Cheese because, well, animatronics, pizzeria, arcade, the similarities are, just gonna call it as I see it.
Chica.
It is. That's freaking Chica.
Let's party.
She really was the first, wasn't she? But besides Chica, who Edwin and Fiona were specifically hired to make for a client, Chica's Party World, yes, that Chica's Party World, all of these other characters were rentable or purchasable from Murray's Costume Manor, meaning Edwin owned these characters. They weren't originally Fazbear's. However, Fazbear was around as another one of Edwin's clients, taking interest in his technological genius, even to the point where Edwin refers to Henry as simply Hen in the audio logs, presumably because they have a level of familiarity and friendship thanks to their shared technological creativity.
I got the change order from Hen last night. They don't think of me as a friend anymore.
But the real tragedy of
Which I hate that this game confirms that Edwin and Henry are different people, because their backstory is quite literally the same, but I'll put that theory to bed. I will realize from the end point until the sun blows up, I will refer Edwin and Henry as different people. There, you happy? I admit it. I was wrong. I have made a severe and utter lapse of my judgment.
Edwin comes from when we looked at his family. I've mentioned his wife Fiona, but he also has a son named David, just like he did in the Tales from the Pizzaplex book series. Unlike that series though, Fiona doesn't die in childbirth. She's still around during David's early years, until she tragically passes away, leaving Edwin to run the business and raise David all on his own, leading Edwin to come up with the only logical solution: build an animatronic that can babysit David, obviously. He creates the M1 mimic. But something strange happens. It begins to not just look after David, but mimic Edwin's dead wife, Fiona. The family is back together again, until it's not. One day, David dies outside the facility, leaving Edwin completely devastated. At the same time, the business is completely crumbling around him. But M1 Fiona has a solution. Make another one of her.
Edwin, you can't put it off any longer. You need to try again. Build another.
Make another mimic that would now mimic David so that they could be together again. Edwin isn't convinced at first, but eventually he gives in. He takes M1 out of the endoskeleton, copies the program, and creates M2, putting the new program into the endoskeleton. And it works. M2 begins acting like David, but it's too much for Edwin to handle, and he snaps.
Grief nitpick, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And we talked about this in previous years as well. M1, something special about it, whether it's like Fiona's soul, the dead wife, their soul was like infused with the software, the endoskeleton, something, but they were able to fuse together perfectly. But then when Edwin tried to do the same thing with M2, it didn't work, right? For some reason, David's dead soul, something, was not able to latch onto the mimic M2 as easily as Fiona did with M1. So it worked, but not as easily. So I just want to call that out as a brief clarification.
Eating the animatronic, breaking its legs, and teaching it the valuable lesson of violence that Arnold now gets to experience firsthand. With that failure under his belt and the business still struggling, Edwin locks himself away with his final Fazbear project, a restaurant called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. But M2 has other plans. It destroys the house, and Edwin is never seen or heard from again. It's a real sad ending, but you see what I mean about how it upends a lot of what we thought we knew. We've got characters we thought were Fazbears now created by someone else. We've got a wildly different setup to Edwin and his family than we saw in the books, and this is just the top level stuff that's been given to us on a plate. The more you dig into these things, the more things begin to change and shift our understanding of the entire franchise. But we've got some time, so let's keep things simple for now. We've been given a bunch of information
Simple. Think about what series you're talking about, friend.
about Edwin, his family, and his company. But what is the timeline of these events? This is FNAF after all. Timelines are a staple for FNAF theorists everywhere. And I don't just mean a vague order of events. I mean cold, hard dates. Well, as you might expect, this game is pretty careful to leave those sorts of details hidden, only giving us months or days for dates at best. They even block out years so we can't place exact details. But when has that ever stopped us before? Let's start with the very first teaser for this game. In it, we saw the number 1979 showing up on a film reel, giving us a pretty good indication that that was when this game would take place. And once we boot up the game, that does seem to still be the case. In Arnold's van, we come across his work order to collect an endoskeleton from Murray's Costume Manor. The job he is literally on. That work order contains both an issue date and a signing date, which both end up being the same date, September 7th, 1979. I suppose that means that the mimic not only faked Dispatch's voice, but also sent a fake work order? And wait, does that mean that Arnold has a fax machine hidden in this van? What other mysteries does this van hold? Oh, Arnold, you teasing enigma. So, okay, we have the end of our timeline for this game.
Hold on, let me see for a second. When was the fax machine invented? That's the type of questions we have to ask ourselves when it comes to FNAF. The first fax machine, hold up. So according to this, the first fax machine was invented in 1843 by Alexander Bain. He received a British patent for his electric printing telegraph, which laid the foundation for transmitting 2D images over distance. While not a commercial success at the time, Bain's invention paved the way for future advancements in fax technology. 1846, improved by Frederick Bakewell, who demonstrates a telefax machine, develops the pentelegraph, the first commercial telefax system, develops optical scanning, allowing for transmission of photos. Xerox introduced the first modern fax machine, cut into standard telephone lines in 1964. So, 1964, at the very latest, is fax machines. And this game takes place in the 70s. So, there you go. Learn something new every day. You learn that fax machines have been around since the 1800s. That's the type of information you come from my streams, right?
But as I've kind of already mentioned, that's like the least interesting part of this game's story. We're really here for the Edwin Murray drama. But don't worry, I think we can figure that one out too, thanks to FNAF's longest running trope, dead kids. Well, kid, specifically his son, David Murray. Wait, you're not David Murray, you're Jafufu, the newest S-rank agent from today's sponsor, Zenless Zone Zero. Nice break, 1600. To download the you can come across 5. This opens up a hatch at the timeline of and Xbox, so whatever your platform, you can claim those awesome rewards. Thanks again to Zenless Zone Zero for sponsoring this video, but now I really gotta tell you about the timeline of David Murray. At the end of the game, you're given a choice. Either give the data diver back or execute something called parachute.exe.
Execute Order 66. I had to.
This opens up a hatch in the floor leading to the R&D department and the Murray's house that's on top of the hill near the factory. While trying to avoid M2, you can come across 5 film reels showing some good old-fashioned Murray family home video for David's birthdays. The first is a little uneventful. He gets scared by a new Pirate Roxy puppet and is given his iconic white tiger plushie. The second, Edwin misses because he's too busy working. The third, Edwin breaks the news to David that Mummy isn't coming back. By the fourth, we see Edwin give David his slide that we see out the front of Murray's costume manor, with the robotic voice of M1 Fiona coming from off screen. And then finally, we get number 5, where we see
and you see, it's very brief, but if you stop and watch this for very closely, if you look at the ground,
Edwin give David his slide that we see out the front of Murray's costume manor, with the robotic voice of M1 Fiona coming from off screen. And then finally,
you see that? You see that circle right here? The ball? You mean David's ball that he was playing with that got into the road that David retrieved and then got hit by a car and killed and then would later become M2? That ball?
we get number 5, where we see Fiona in all her mimicky animatronic glory. She made a cake for David's birthday and is asked to go outside and collect David before the party gets started. And it's that last video that is crucial to solving this mystery. When M1 Fiona presents her cake, we can see the room she's in, and it's not the Murray's family home like all the others. This is actually an office inside Murray's costume manor. And we know that because if you're willing to spend a lot of time avoiding rollerblading Chica, you actually get to see this room firsthand, complete with all the same decorations.
Oh my gosh. Happy birthday, David.
The place looks abandoned. The food has been there a while, now all molded over. And we find out why thanks to the text logs that we have to collect to figure out the password for this room. On December 1st, Edwin sends out a work memo telling the workers that they need to be here on Saturday for David's party. Then there's a bunch of more light-hearted, jokey messages between the other employees about the room code, but on the 6th, the tone shifts. A message tells everyone that the party has been cancelled due to recent tragic events. With the state of the room, the notices we find about not bringing children to work, and the fact that the playground Edwin refers to must be the play park he got David for one of his birthdays, the one near the loading bay, the one he was warned would be too dangerous to have a kid near.
Look, I get your concern. I do. but they're all just surroundings. This is the perfect spot for David's playground.
It all adds up to this being the day that David died. On Saturday, December 6th, everyone was there gathered together just like Edwin had asked, only for M1 to go down to find David and report him dead.
Okay, everyone hide. Fiona, go get him.
Saturday was the day of the party, and that cancellation message was sent out the same day. December 6th was only on a Saturday once in the 1970s. 1975. Now, given we have 5 film reels, you'd assume that would make this David's 5th birthday, and so his date of birth would be December 6th, 1970. How?
If I'm not mistaken, in the book, David was 4 when he died. I could be wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, that sounds right to me. He was 4 when he died.
However, I'm not entirely sure that's the case. Firstly, the achievement you get for entering David's party room is called Belated Birthday, and the icon is of a birthday cake with not 5 candles, but 6. And I think we all know that when you're a kid, the number of candles on your cake matters big time. I guess just like content creators, we all like seeing number go up. There's also the matter of the collectibles scattered throughout MCM. By gathering them all, you can boot up a minigame on the computers known as moon.exe. This thing is full of interesting details and symbolism that we will 100% be exploring in the future, but the detail that's interesting right now is the collectible called the Full Fest Snow Globe. When you find it again inside moon.exe, you can give it a shake, and we're given this description. Opening day snow globe. A wonderful day with all of us at Full Fest. It's worth noting that right behind this snow globe is a statue of a married couple. The man wears a bow tie, which is something we see associated with Edwin throughout the game. I mean, just look at the guy's logo. He loves bow ties.
Bow ties are cool.
This couple is supposed to be Edwin and Fiona, and so this line about Full Fest is tied to them. But the use of the word all here is telling. If it was just supposed to be Edwin and Fiona, it would have just said both of us or the two of us. But all implies a group, i.e. David is also present. Thanks to Help Wanted 2, the earliest Full Fest we know about happened in 1970. So for this to be a big opening day to the point where Fazbear creates a special snow globe, it's likely that it's that year being referenced, 1970. And if Scott cares,
I will say one nitpick. This is probably getting very wishy-washy, like, oh, but actually territory. Like, one thing you could logic this out, you could say that all of us, it could be what they're referring to is Edwin and Fiona are there, present physically, and Fiona is pregnant with David. So they would still technically be all of them there. David just not born yet. Right? But they're there like, hey, in spirit, in pregnancy, right? Kind of thing.
At all about giving this series any kind of logical consistency, Fall Fest would likely have to happen in the autumn. Fine, fall. With David's birthday being established as December 6th, it would be physically impossible for him to also be here on the opening day of Fall Fest in 1970, because he wouldn't have been born for another couple of months. So he'd have to have been born at least a year earlier, making him at minimum 6. But then why only show us 5 videos? What happened to the missing birthday? Well, we already know that Edwin is too busy to focus on his kid, hence he made the mimic in the first place. Would it be out of the realm of possibility that he was so busy he didn't even celebrate one of his kids' birthdays? The game certainly seems to think so, because inside the Storytime showroom you can find David's little den with all of his drawings on the wall, and one of them depicts a birthday with David surrounded not by family but by characters, and he has a cake with 4 candles on it. Up until now, David's parties have always been at his house, surrounded by family, not by characters. We never see a video of him having a birthday surrounded by characters, which implies that this is a birthday not caught on camera. Edwin missed his son's 4th birthday. He was so busy trying to save the company and possibly even building M1 that he got his staff to dress up as characters and look after him instead. Then, a year later, David gets his big slide and suddenly M1 Fiona exists to take care of David. This puts David's 6th birthday in 1975, and therefore his date of birth is actually December 6th, 1969. Nice. From here, we can actually extrapolate a few other dates and start to put things into a rough timeline. We never get exact ages for Edwin and Fiona, but we do know that David was their first and only child. In the late 60s and early 70s, the average age of first-time parents was 21.4 years old.
Jeez. How times have changed. 21 years old, first time parents. Man. Obviously, it's way different living in the 70s compared to now. But I'm just thinking 21-year-old me. Could I have been a parent at 21 years old? Absolutely not. I mean, I don't even think I can be a parent nowadays, and I'm 26.
And looking at marriages in the late 1960s, the average man was 23, while the average woman was about 20 when they got married. If Fiona is following these averages, that would mean they pretty much had David just over a year after getting married, putting their wedding in 1968. On top of that, the average length of an engagement for a couple in the 1960s was around just 3 to 6 months, with the ideal scenario being a fall engagement with a spring or summer wedding. And most would only have been dating for 6 months prior to that. So Fiona and Edwin most likely would have gotten engaged in the fall of 1967 and probably only started dating earlier that year. But as I've already told you, this relationship ends far too prematurely. One of the audio logs we find throughout the facility is a voice recording left by Fiona to Edwin explaining that she needs to go to one of their clients' events to make sure nothing goes wrong.
I have to go help the Fall Fest crew. I just have this terrible feeling like I need to be there so nothing goes wrong.
Now, remember that part of Moon.exe I mentioned earlier that shows us the married couple? The one representing Edwin and Fiona with the Fall Fest snow globe at their feet? Well, the woman's statue is described as being burnt and blackened. There's also a stall nearby that focuses on sewing materials, like a stand for someone who was maybe there to help with costumes and puppeteering, similar to what we know Fiona was capable of. That stand is also completely burnt down and destroyed. Putting all of that together, it clearly tells us that the event Fiona went to was Fall Fest, the Fazbear Carnival we've been theorizing about for so long. And just as we've been predicting, it absolutely did end in fire, taking Fiona's life with it. Edwin breaks this news to David on his 3rd birthday, and as we've established, Fall Fest should happen in the fall just before that. So that puts Fiona's death sometime between September and November 1970. So, right now, our timeline looks like this. Edwin and Fiona start dating in early 1967. They then get engaged in the fall of that year, which I'm now only just realizing might explain why they're in wedding outfits in Moon.exe. They're next to the Fall Fest snow globe. It's the same time of year, almost as if they're going to Fall Fest like some kind of anniversary celebration. Anyway, they get married in 1968 and have David in 1969. A few years passed, and in the fall of 1972, Fiona goes to Fall Fest and dies in a fire. Edwin then creates the Mimic over the next couple of years. But on the day of David's 6th birthday in 1975, David dies outside the facility. Edwin falls into a pit of despair. He tries to bring back David as M2, but gets angry, beats it up, and disappears, leaving M2 to roam the facility and Fazbear to grow impatient with Edwin's lack of deliverables, and so they send in Arnold to take what is theirs in September 1979. But there is one more date we're able to track thanks to all of this. The death of Murray Sr. Now, look, I know he may not seem like an important...
Also, in between, Fazbear Entertainment sent employees for Edwin's costume manor to retrieve the technology because they got impatient. Because once again, Fazbear Entertainment does what Fazbear Entertainment does. They're all about capitalism and money. And then Arnold, who we play as in the game and everything, we obviously know a previous team, at least one team, but potentially maybe multiple teams, but at least one team of Fazbear technicians went to the costume manor to retrieve the software, the Mimic software, and they failed because they ran into M2, the David Mimic that had the homicidal tendencies after it got beat by Edwin. right? So I bring it all up because Arnold's not the first person to retrieve the Mimic software for Phasma Entertainment. They're one of the, Nets teams because previous teams failed.
Character in all of this. Let's be honest, he's kind of a footnote in the whole game. We only see his portrait a couple of times, and we only get 2 audio logs even mentioning him. But those 2 audio logs reveal a lot, not only about when he died, but also the final order of events for Murray's costume manor, and an interesting detail about our favorite singing bear company. In the audio log where we learn about Murray Sr.'s passing, it's a conversation between Edwin and Fiona, so they do have to have at least met at this point. Plus, they seem quite close.
The company is going to collapse and they're all going to hate me.
And you'll figure it out. Just take a deep breath. It's your company now. Your dad believed in you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left it to you.
She's being encouraging in the way that a supportive partner would and should. So they're most likely at least dating when he passes. But the real key comes from when you backtrack through the entire game to find this specific Mr. Helpful. I mentioned earlier how we get new permissions for our data diver throughout the game to access new areas. Well, that isn't the only thing you get to access. The Mr. and Mrs. Helpfuls throughout the facility also have different responses depending on the staff level that is talking to them. If you go back and find them all once you get executive level access, we actually start to hear messages recorded by Edwin or Fiona directly addressing one another. And this one right here is very interesting indeed.
I've got something very important to ask you. Okay, here goes. You become the heart of this company, and I want to share it with you. And you're also really pretty, like asymmetrical pretty, so will you marry me, please?
Yes, it's very nerdy and very sweet, just like how I proposed. The point is, during Edwin's awkward ramblings, he says this line.
You become the heart of this company.
You are the heart of the company. When they met, she was just a new employee. There's no way she would be that instrumental to the company and its quote-unquote heart. However, once Murray Sr. passed on and Edwin was left in charge, Fiona became his main collaborator. She is the one who cared for the employees and the company while Edwin was off making more crazy inventions. We can even hear her concern during the pre-recorded elevator repair tapes.
I will say she's also the heart of the company because her voice is the one that is used for, the instruction tutorials. Right? Her voice is being played throughout the facility. So that could also be a reason why she's the heart of the company, because her voice is being played everywhere.
Please follow the instructions to reset the elevator. Sounds scary.
It feels like she's reading a script and she's kind of concerned about what she's reading.
It's only once Edwin takes over that Fiona has the opportunity to fill the position as the heart of the company. And also, this recording is on a Helpful, one of the things that Edwin would only have been able to install fully once he'd taken over.
Could start making some of my inventions for real.
All of that to say that Murray Sr. died sometime between Edwin and Fiona dating and them getting engaged, placing it sometime in 1967. And that's an important detail because while it seems early in most timelines for this franchise, Murray Sr. appears to have some kind of connection with Fazbear Entertainment, even before he passes and hands the company over to Edwin. In a number of the audio logs you can find later on in the game, it becomes very clear that Edwin is getting a little bit paranoid.
Edwin, never forget, they're behind it. Don't trust them. Never tell them they want to destroy you. Dad was right.
Now, you may be asking, who is this them, and what is it he's not supposed to be
William Afton Henry, right?
telling them? Well, through another couple of audio and text logs, both of those answers become quite easy to figure out. In literally the next audio log you can obtain, Edwin tells us that there's a leak in the company.
I figured it out. There's a leak. Someone told them about M2. Well, they can't have it.
M2, the brand new mimic that can adjust to any costume and mimic any character or person, is what's being leaked. And with that in mind, the they becomes even easier to figure out. A bunch of the text logs have a consistent running theme. Working for Murray's costume manor sucks. They want out.
One more injury and I'm out of here. I mean it this time. Barb, I swear, if I hear that song one more time, I'm going to tear that dolly off her hinges. I have no clue how much longer I can take it here.
Some of them leave on their own accord, while others are being poached by a rival company.
William Afton.
We're almost there. I need the rest of the Murray staff contact info. The sooner the better. You get that from me, and I can sweeten the deal. How would you like to manage one of the new franchise locations? W.A. That's right, good old Willie A is here, and he's as evil a businessman as we always thought. Fazbear is actively stealing not just employees, but their business secrets. So, it's Fazbear that is, quote, behind it. They are the ones who want to destroy Edwin, and he is reminding himself to not let them have the Mimic program. But do you remember the last thing he said?
Dad was right.
Dad was right. This mini paranoid speech is all about how Fazbear isn't to be trusted, and those words of advice came from Edwin's father. How? Because clearly Murray Sr. knew about Fazbear, Afton, and all of their shady business practices. Either because Murray Sr. was already in business with them prior to his death, or simply because MCM had been around for a while, and so he'd have likely seen how they operated and how small businesses they were working with suddenly disappeared. And so he made sure to warn his son about them. We all knew that Fazbear had been around a lot longer than we thought with the introduction of the 1970s Fall Fest poster in Help Wanted 2, but now it seems that they go back even further. Sure, it's only a few more years on paper, but just like everything in this game, we're being shown that we can't strictly rely on what we think we know as definitive. If we thought this prequel destroyed our understanding of the franchise, just wait until we learn about what was going on before all of this. First, it's a few more years into the 1960s, but who knows how far back it goes. Maybe Matt and I weren't so far off with the whole singing bear in the 1930s. But hey, that's just a theory.
Man. Okay, but there we go. That is the theory video, and indeed, everything that we have been told about this series is a lie. Is the full-on gaslighting? I'm not too sure. I guess I cannot speak on it fully yet because this is just part one of a 3-part series. I feel like I need to react to all 3 parts and then come to my conclusion of, have we been getting gaslight all this time and everything? Has William Afton been pulling the wool over eyes? Yeah, right. Have they been pulling the wool over eyes? And yeah, everything that we've thought we've known about the series has indeed been a lie. But I said this before, I'm gonna always say this, and I can't wait to see future theories on everyone talk about this. I want to know definitively, now that it's painting this picture of Edwin being from the beginning, creating animatronics that we originally thought were from William Afton and Henry, but they stole the technology. I want to know definitively, these are Edwin creations, these are William Afton creations, and these are Henry creations, right? Because it sounds simple, like, oh, you know, the Mimic is obviously Edwin. The, you know, Funtimetronics from Sister Location, they're obviously William Afton. The Meteoric Melodies, FNAF 6 is obviously, you know, Henry. Like, why is it so complicated? Well, it's very complicated, actually. It's not that very cut and dry simple. Because you have some animatronics that it gets very, very wishy-washy of, well, who didn't make it? Because, for instance, in FNAF 6, you know, you have characters like Trash in the Game and Mr. Hugs, a vacuum cleaner animatronic, right? And we believe everything in FNAF 6 to be made by Henry, right? But then you have this game, and you have, as you saw, a vacuum cleaner animatronic from the 70s. So was Mr. Hugs, the vacuum cleaner from FNAF 6, was he made by William Afton that we thought about, that everyone made, everything made in FNAF 6 was made by Henry? Or was it inspired by Edwin? That's another thing that was stolen later on in the series. You see how complicated it gets? Right? You see how complicated it gets when it comes to the series? So, yeah, you can't really definitively say, Mimic here was made by this person. Funtimer was made by this person. Right? Because where's the least self-attraction again in Mr. Hugs? Right? It's from FNAF 6, so that's either made by Henry, but there's vacuum cleaner animatronics that was made by Edwin. So which is it? But cannot wait to talk about this game a lot more because I enjoy it. I enjoy FNAF. I will always enjoy it. I will always enjoy the FNAF theories, talk about them and give my thoughts and everything. And I will never stop. You want to know why I'm never going to stop? Because I don't think there's going to be a time where we will definitively come to an answer. Yes, these are the definitive answers. We have found world peace, and we have found all the answers to this series. It will never happen. So, as much as theories videos get pumped out and everything, I will have theory reaction videos on said theories. Give my thoughts on it. And just along for this ride in this constant whirlwind of FNAF, trying to piece together what the difference between a Fredbear, Rockstar Freddy, Glamrock Freddy, and a Funtime Freddy is. So keep enjoying this fast ride.